For more on this, we're now joined by Willem Els, a Senior Training Coordinator for the Institute for Security Studies. And Willem joins us now via our video link. Willem, thank you so much for joining us here on the late edition on SABC News. I mean, just listening there to the Police Minister, more than 500,000 arrests are made in the past 11 months. As the ISS, how do you respond to that? That is quite concerning, one would say.
Good evening to you. Yes, I think we should, on the one hand, we should commend the police. You know, crime statistics over the last few years have soared tremendously and actually went through the roof. So this Operation Chanela actually demonstrated the willingness and the political will from the police and management in order to try to curb this wave of crime that is affecting everyone in South Africa. So that is the good news. What is more concerning is, remember that each and every of these suspects that have been arrested, they are not guilty until proven guilty in court. So what will happen now is that's a tremendous burden on the detective services of the police and the Hawks in order to investigate and to build case files and case dockets against these criminals that can be tabled at the NPA to successfully prosecute that. And the problem that we have there is that the police is currently tremendously understaffed in order to effectively investigate all of this magnitude of cases.
And Willem, of course, you are saying that as much as these are arrests, they're also not, convicted of the crime. On the other hand, when you're looking and zooming into the Operation Chanela, what does it say about the police and its war against crime?
Well, it says to us that there are inroads that are being made. But if you look at crimes, we look at 500,000 people that have been arrested, or just more than 500,000 people. If you look at contact crimes, for instance, in the last quarter of last year, the last 4 months, more than 30,000 of them have been committed in South Africa, and that's just for the last 4 months. So that demonstrates to us that in fact, crime is really rampant in South Africa, and it affects every one of us negatively in some way. So that poses a challenge for us. But at the other hand, as you also mentioned, these people are not guilty as yet. So that case, it must be thoroughly built, it must be investigated, it must be scrutinized, and they must thoroughly build this case in order to table it to the NPA. Where the NPA then will decide, okay, they refer it back for further investigation, or there's no case, or they will proceed with the prosecution. And that also puts a tremendous strain on your NPA that is also under-resourced at the moment.
And Willem, another thing that the minister also touched on is the number of cases that it has been dealing with. And we would also remember that, when it comes to high-profile cases, the police have quite often been criticized in terms of their turnaround. And we're hearing now that, with the new strategies that the police has adopted, it's beginning to yield some sort of results. What would you say has changed now in the way in which they are conducting these cases?
Well, in the first place, I think the occurrences of just over 2 years ago, where our intelligence services were really caught napping, that demonstrated to us that there was a tremendous lack of intelligence, whether it was your national intelligence or your crime intelligence, in order to prevent and forewarn what has happened back then. What we saw in recent months is that with all your major cases, with all your major operations that are being carried out, and all your major successes, we see that it is reported as an intelligence-driven operation. And as the minister mentioned, that is a very complex. It's something that needs to be built. It's something that needs to be structured. It needs to be planned, etc., etc. And it seems that there is an improvement from the intelligence services of the crime intelligence services of the police on crime. And of course, that informs then your operations. You can start to act proactively against crime. And some of these events, especially your cash and transit heists, etc., we saw several of those who have been prevented when these criminals were apprehended before they could even commit these crimes.
And Willem, we've seen the arrests and the shootings taking place in the KwaZulu-Natal province, and we've also seen, while some have commended the police for their work, but there's also been this public outcry in terms of the force which has been used by the police. What do you have to say when it comes to the criticisms there, when it comes to the police? So do you think that the police are doing a good job, or, you know, that this outcry is justified from the public?
Well, in the first place, we have to say that any loss of life is regrettable, including that of course, our men and women in blue, where the minister also mentioned that more than 100 of them have lost their lives in the last year. So that on the one hand, we have to also take one step back and just look at your statistics of crime. And if you look at especially let's look at KwaZulu-Natal, you had more than 1,600 murders in the last 4 months. You had more than 1,900 attempted murders in that country, in that province. You have your more than 8,000 assault GBH in that province, robberies more than 2,000. So that just gives you an indication that and all of these crimes are committed with weapons and in many cases firearms. So whenever the police is now planning and they are reacting and going to arrest these people, of course, we saw in recent years and months that there's not the respect for the police that it used to be. The criminals became more brazen. The criminal gangs became more brazen. When the police then apprehend them, more often than none, they respond by firing at the police, and then, of course, the police have to protect themselves and then use force. And as long as they do that within the auspices of the law, so that is very important. The police are also restricted. They are also governed by the same laws that we are, and they have to adhere to the law. So every time that they use their firearm, they are being scrutinized. Cases are being opened by IPID, and they are being investigated, just as you and me as a civilian will be investigated. And then should the investigation find that they have not worked according to the law, of course, then they will be charged.
And looking at the number of police who have lost their lives, I mean, 109 police officers who have been killed in the past year, one would say that it is quite a high number of men in blue being lost. How do you react to that as the ISS?
Of course, that is one policeman killed is one too many. That we do not want, and we really deplore that from our side. And if you look at those statistics, it's quite high in terms of ratio in the world as well. South Africa became quite a violent country. If you look at the transnational organized crime index, for Africa, we see that South Africa lays number 3 in Africa in terms of criminality levels, but also we lay at number 7 in the world. And that is a reflection of just the criminality and the high levels of criminality in South Africa. And unfortunately so, most of their criminalities are extremely violent in nature. And then when the police then react, they come under fire. We see they come under fire when they are responding to cases. We also come under fire when these criminal gangs are targeting them to obtain their firearms. So these people are a target, and it's very regrettable that we have lost so many men in blue. But what we also have to reiterate here is the importance of training. So from management and from a strategic management perspective, we think that there should be more investment in our men and women in blue in terms of firearms, when they're supposed to use it, when they're not supposed, in terms of the legality of the use, but also in the skillful use of their firearms, because that has been neglected over the past few years.
All right, Mr. Els, thank you so much for your time this evening. That is Willem Els. He is Senior Training Coordinator for the Institute for Security Studies. Just weighing in there when it comes to the crime statistics coming out from the police minister earlier today, talking about over 500,000 arrests being made in the past 11 months.